Canby City Council regular meeting. If you will please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please stay standing for a moment of silence. Great. Thank you very much. Just to let everyone know, we actually had a work session this evening to discuss the early process of the upcoming budget meetings and whatnot that'll be starting here soon, and looking at different timelines and possibly some policy decisions that we will need to be looking at. So just let you know that we had that already this evening. So we'll move into communications.
We did receive communication, Mayor. It was addressed to Joseph and myself, and it pertains to the telecommunications ordinance, and we believe there are representatives here that might be talking about that, so what the contents of that letter. So if the council needs to see it, I'm certainly welcome to look at it, but that's the communication we got.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And with that statement, I know that we've got public hearing this evening, so those of you that do want to talk during that session, please fill out a yellow card and turn that into Kim so that we can make sure you get the time. Thank you, Greg. So our first opportunity for citizen input and community announcements. So if you have anything that you want to talk to us about that's not on the agenda this evening, now is your first opportunity to do so. So if you'd like to come up front, please feel free. Raise your hand. Seeing none, we will move on. All right. Mayor's business, a couple of things. I want to thank Chief Smith and City Administrator Greg Ellis for the support to Oregon City these last couple of weeks. I know we've had officers over there, and we sent our police as well as our fire sent a delegation to the memorial service. So thank you to you and to Chief for freeing up our officers to help them out so that they can get things taken care of over there. So thanks.
Thank you.
I had a great opportunity to participate in a historical tour of Canby a couple of weeks back. The River Park Adult Center from Eugene brought a busload of people up, and they had a lovely tour of historical Canby. So I joined them for that, and found out there was just a few things that I didn't know about Canby. But it was a great afternoon, and I want to thank the Historical Society for putting that together and providing that tour. I think they'll be back. They had a good time. Moving through my list here, the congratulations to the Canby Center on their grand opening. Great success and a great turnout for that. They're in a new location and doing great things for our community. So if you get a chance, they're now located over by Canby High School behind, right over there by the old ModCom building, which is and whatnot on 3rd. So please go by there and pay them a visit. There's a grand opening celebration this weekend for a new business in the Fred Meyer Shopping Center for Nature's Pet, so please go by and visit them. And then Small Business Saturday is coming up on November 30th, so please, if you're done with the big malls and the big box stores, shop local and see what our town has in store. On the C4, so the Clackamas County Coordinating Committee had a meeting earlier this month, trying to watch our vernacular and let everyone know that not everyone knows what C4 stands for. A couple of conversations that evening. First one was about high-speed rail. They're looking at adding routes and more track between Eugene and Portland. So they're talking about taking speeds up from about the 50 mile an hour to about 125 in the straightaways. So flatter areas between probably Eugene and Salem before they get up our direction. There will, so increase trips. They are considering looking at a route through Canby. Obviously wouldn't come through here at 125, but it would be definitely increased train traffic. They're looking at additional track added throughout at various points. The estimated price they're looking at is $3 billion, of which Oregon would need to contribute about $300 million to. So there's some various open houses still planned. You can go to OregonPassengerRail.org if you want to read that and or make comment. There are additional open houses, like I said, coming up. There was conversation about the getting representation for small cities like Canby and Wilsonville that have their own transportation system, i.e. like we have CAT. So to be able to have them have input at the Portland Area Commission on Transportation, so we don't actually have a seat at the table, but we will have be able to give input and know what's going on where we haven't been able to have that in the past. And then there was some heated discussion on a proposed utility fee for transportation district that would impact unincorporated Clackamas County. There's also discussion of possibly doubling the vehicle registration fee, all of which has to do with roads, road improvement throughout Clackamas County, and also additional improvement projects down the road. So I think we'll be told more on that at our next meeting, and I know that there's been some Oregon Live articles and whatnot out there as well. So it's an ever-evolving process, so stay tuned for that. And that is all I have on my front. We'll start with Council Rocha for council liaison reports.
Thank you. Parks and Rec, there was no meeting this month, so nothing to report there. On Canby Fire, they're actually meeting right now, so not going to have anything for that till next time. I'll get that from Ted Coons. And Canby Adult Center, I had my first meeting with them this last week, and I was able to go early and have lunch, and really enjoyed it. I just got to meet some of the seniors there, some of the people who work there. It was about 3 hours there, and I enjoyed it. I really liked it. I won't get into many of the details of the board meeting, but one of the things that came up that surprised me I didn't know is that they're on a one-year lease. And I don't know how any business or an adult center can work not knowing what they're going to do 3, 5, 10 years down the road. So at some point I hope that there can be a discussion on their lease. So, and that's all I have.
All right, thanks, sir. Councilor Hensley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You already covered the Clackamas County Coordinating Committee liaison assignment, so I will just move into Main Street Promotions Committee that I sit on. Wanted to remind everybody about Light Up the Night. It's our annual Christmas tree lighting and parade. It'll be during First Friday on December 6th. First Friday, running from 5 to 8 p.m., with the parade beginning at 6, and we'll light the trees. The tree lighting will happen in the park 6:30-ish, is what I'm told. Depends on the length of the parade. So, after which, during the tree lighting part, I will have Cascade Harmony performing at the park, and after the tree lighting, Catalinas will be caroling throughout downtown. The Catalinas is the choir group from the high school. The other piece of that is Jamie wanted a reminder that Who Lights Up Canby is a little program that we're doing to pick who gets to light up the park, and that's done by nomination. So if you have somebody that you think lights up Canby, you can give Jamie a call or contact her through the email, and follow the Canby Main Street Facebook page for further details on who's going to do the lighting and the business tree decorating contest. If you are a business and wish to participate, get in contact with Jamie and she'll tell you how to get involved with that. For those who would be looking at the trees, the public gets to vote for their favorite decorated tree, and by way of putting canned goods under their tree in their businesses. So you get to go visit all the businesses, which is a good thing, and then check out all the trees, put your canned goods under your favorite one, and all the canned goods are being collected for the Kiwanis Canned Food and Toy Drive. That is that piece for Main Street. And after he rests up from our parade, Santa will return to Canby on Saturday, December 7th to visit the Canby Depot Museum from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. School board front, we have our meeting tomorrow night at 6:30 in the Omni Room, which is at the Applied Technology Center at the Canby High School. I'm expecting a shorter than usual meeting. The longest item on the agenda is about 30 minutes, in which they'll discuss a charter school application for Canby Grove. So I'm looking forward to maybe not being out till 10 or 11 o'clock. We'll see. Knock, knock. And finally, a couple of Legion announcements. The Canby Aurora VFW Spaghetti Dinner, some folks might remember them coming in, and that was originally scheduled for September. That's going to be held this Saturday, the 23rd of November, from 4 to 7 p.m. at the Aurora Legion Hall. And then the Canby Legion Post 122 Auxiliary hosting another community breakfast. So I know you're out of town, you can catch it this weekend. So that'll be $6 for adults, ages 10 and under is $3, and it's at the Legion Hall on First Avenue, but enter through the First Street entrance. That is what I have this week.
Thank you very much. Councilor Coleman.
Mr. Mayor, since your last meeting, I attended the library board meeting. They just had the bookstore reopening, grand reopening this past Saturday, incorporating a new theme for the library that adds on our garden spot theme. They're also very encouraged by the number of applicants for the new library director, so maybe, Mr. City Manager, you could touch on that?
Sure. We received, I think it was 13 applicants. Most of them out of state. There was one or two maybe that were in state. And Amanda finished reviewing all of those Monday. She'll be setting up, making sure they're qualified, at least basic qualifications. There were some that were not. And, but they sent an application just hoping that maybe we didn't get any other applications, I guess. And so she'll be setting up interviews and probably asking, I don't know, somebody help on the selection committee, et cetera. So,
Thank you for that. Great. Also, coming up this next week, Tracy and I will be at a Main Street meeting. I believe that's this next Monday. Also on Wednesday, I'll be attending the Team Track meeting being put on by Matilda D. So that's good, very exciting. And then on first Friday, December, our traffic safety meeting will be getting together. And we have a visitor coming, Red Flux, that has those electronic cameras to try to manage speed. So that should be interesting. You're all invited to those traffic safety meetings. They're the first Friday of every month in the Public Shops conference room just off of Territorial in Redwood. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor, likewise attended the Friends of the Library bookstore opening and took the American Legion up on their invitation to have breakfast, courtesy of the Ladies Auxiliary, and I can only say it was awesome.
Did you nap afterwards?
Yeah. Most carbs I've had in months. Finally, for liaison reports, a big week for Canby Utility. They were able to energize the brand-new Knightsbridge substation this week. And I, of course, being a nerd, had to go watch that, and it was pretty amazing to watch those breakers swing into place. There's a little bit of a buzz, a little tiny spark, and then the hum starts of the transformer. And the lights came on at the substation. So great news. Congratulations to Bob Cornelius and all the fine men and women at Canby Utility. That substation will give us independence from PGE's substation and much greater future capacity and reliability for Canby's ratepayers. So real good news all the way around. Congratulations, Bob. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Well, my passion for my liaison with Main Street is sadly dwarfed by Councilor Dale's liaison love for Cubs, so I do look forward to his reports. Tracy did a great job talking about the Main Street programs, Light the Night program. It is so neat to see here on a cold December last year just how many people showed up, and I think part of the thanks goes to both Tracy and Clint for working on the promotions committee. I appreciate that very much. And just an asterisk there, it's the award-winning Catalinas, the high school performance group that will be there. I was also at the Canby Center at their dedication, and I just have to say, we've had a number of people work at that for years, so that that program would have a home of its own. And some people who are quite modest about their volunteer efforts have spent a lot of time and their own money at it, and it is a real blessing to this community, so I appreciate their efforts. Another blessing is our Friends of the Library. Terrific new bookstore that they put in. If you haven't had a chance to see it, hop down to the library and pop in there. It's really kind of neat. And from my liaison report for the Historic Review Board, we are a winner.
The city of Canby is a winner, and I bet nowhere in the history of Canby has ever before received an award for the Perky Preservationist Award. Apparently, our board is so enthusiastic it won the Perky Preservation Award at the last Certified Government Workshop. So one of our historic board members, Carol Palmer, accepted it on our behalf. And finally, I promised I would pass this along, and I know also Tracy is a member of the Facebook fan club for the Canby turkeys that are wildly roaming some of our streets and
My neighborhood, as a matter of fact.
in your neighborhood, and just I think it's a real neat little thing that we've got going here. We've got hundreds of people that are following it, and I just wish all of those fellows good health over the next 2 weeks.
Yes, we watch them carefully this time of the year.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I had no liaison reports for this time, but I will be attending one tomorrow and then next Monday. But this past week, I was able to attend the Data Security Solutions presentation given by Michael Whetstone. His company headquarters is up in Spokane, Washington, and he was invited by Chief Smith to make his presentation on security in the home especially. They have a product that is sold at Lowe's, and it is a pen that has a solution that is, when applied to whatever object you want to protect, is totally clear. You can't see it unless you have a special light that is shined on it, and then it highlights it, and they gave the police chief several readers that you have to apply very close to the object, like on a, let's say on a laptop, and you can put these spots in 3 or 4 different places. It has up to 300 applications, and if, for instance, down at our, pawn shop, if they call the police and say they think they have an object that's been stolen or suspicious, the police can come down with their reader and their light, and if the dot's there, they can find it and read these microscopic numbers. Every pen has these specific, I think it's 6-digit numbers or 12 digits, and it's unique to that pen, and you put all this information added into their computer database, and so the police can look at that, get the number, get online, and find out who the object belongs to, call the individual, find out if they did have it stolen, or if they reported it to police, then they can verify the number. And I just think it's an absolutely phenomenal way to guard against theft, at least to have a much larger chance of getting your property back if you apply these to whatever, and you can do it as very small chains like gold or silver objects, and anything of value, guns or whatever. And so I encourage Chief Smith to get on Cat 5 and to take some time to broadcast this out and hear through our television access, to encourage citizens as well as those in attendance here to get one of these. I'm getting one as soon as I get to Lowe's.
Yeah, I think one of the major Portland news channels were out and
Yes.
interviewed him, and
3 of them.
yeah, and I think they're called cop dots.
And I saw, yeah, and I saw it on Channel 12, right?
Yeah. Very cool. Well, thank you, sir. All right, moving to accept the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda, which includes approval of the minutes of the November 6, 2013 City Council work session and regular meeting.
Thank you, sir. A second, please.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Dale and seconded by Councilor Rocha to approve the consent agenda, which includes the approval of the minutes of the November 6, 2013 City Council work session and regular meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes 6-0. Thank you very much. Moving into a couple of public hearings this evening. So we will get to read the public hearing format. We have two. The first one will be for fees for telecommunication providers under Canby Municipal Code, Chapter 12.36, and fees for payroll and self-employment tax payments submitted without corresponding tax return. So the matter presently before the hearing body requires a public hearing. All interested persons in attendance shall be heard on the matter. If you wish to testify on this matter, please fill out a yellow comment card and give it to the city recorder. At the appropriate time, please step forward to the microphone, state your name and interest in the matter. Those people that are interested in testifying as either proponents or opponents, please indicate your desire to speak by raising your hand at this time. Thank you. For longer presentations, proponents and opponents may buy time from one another. In so doing, those either in favor or opposed shall allocate their time to a spokesperson who will represent the entire group. All questions must be directed through the mayor. Any evidence to be considered must be submitted to the hearing body for public access. All written testimony received both for and against shall be summarized by staff and presented briefly to the hearing body during the staff report. The public hearing will be conducted as follows. We will have a staff report. Questions, if any, by the hearing body or by staff. We will open the public hearing for testimony. The proponents will have not more than 5 minutes, and the opponents not more than 5 minutes. Close the public testimony. There will be more questions, if any, by the hearing body, and then discussion by the hearing body. A decision shall be made by the hearing body at the close of the hearing, or the matter will be continued to a date certain in the future. This will be the only notice of the date you will receive. Does anyone have any questions on the procedures at this time? All right, seeing none, we will go into the staff report.
Okay, well, before you tonight, for second reading is the telecommunications ordinance, which itself calls for certain fees to be set by council resolution. And so tonight we have the resolution with proposed fees to include a registration application fee of $100, an annual registration fee proposed at 5% of gross revenues, defined in the document, a right-of-way use fee with a proposed 7% of gross revenues, as well as the potential for telecommunications providers who occupy the right-of-way but then don't actually earn any revenue in town, but are in the right-of-way, and that right-of-way needs to be maintained, patrolled, all of that. And for the privilege of using that right-of-way, the suggestion would be $2 per linear foot that is in town. And for franchise fees, the suggestion is 7% of gross revenues, or likewise, that fee of $2 per linear foot. So if somebody comes and has a franchise, but which they should do if they're in our ground, then but they don't earn actual revenue in town, but we're still patrolling and maintaining and responsible for having that through our town. There's the 2 foot per linear, or $2 per linear foot that they occupy within our city limits. So those are the suggested amounts. The gross revenues definition itself shouldn't be a surprise, I don't think, to anybody, because that is either a verbatim or very similar language to what all current franchisees enjoy under their current franchise agreements. So really, that would be for folks who, have no franchise agreement at all, which would be the folks who we would need to nab through the right-of-way use fee. And it also would apply to the annual registration fee. And so there it is.
So Joe, the franchise fee, the 7%, that's pretty much been our standard.
Yes, since 2011, people in town have all basically negotiated and come to a 7% franchise fee. More currently, this past year, we've had one person who negotiated and then accepted a 7% franchise fee at Lightspeed, and then two others who were up for second reading who are also currently set to enjoy a 7% franchise fee.
Then regarding the application fee, how is that, so it's $100, how is that fee determined?
Well, that fee itself was looking at, registration application fee really is based on, what kind of costs it would require to administer and process the registration applications. There's currently an up to $2,000 franchise fee application, because when you're negotiating these things, there's a lot of lawyer time involved. When you look at, registering on top of that, you're looking at some administrative fees, but far less than, say, negotiating a whole franchise fee. So basically, the idea there is we currently charge, I believe, $50 per business just to have them sign back up every year. And so this initial registration application fee is just trying to look to be reasonable.
Questions up here on, any other questions up here?
Couple. We've had some discussion earlier via email, but I wanted to be clear for everybody. If this resolution passes tonight, these fees take effect immediately upon all franchisees.
Well, technically, they take effect once the ordinance takes effect, because the ordinance mentions that
Okay.
these will be set by resolution. So once the ordinance goes into effect, I don't believe there's an emergency provision, so it'll be 30 days from it.
Alrighty.
That's a better answer.
And so people that have current franchise agreements, they are subject to it right away. They do not wait till their current franchise agreements expire, right?
They do not wait, yeah. If a lot of these franchise agreements are 5-year agreements, and so they would not, the language built into those says, as amended from time to time, when it refers to our ordinance. And so that all of them had the understanding that there are applicable changes in law that would adjust their franchise agreements, yes.
And so this is one of those, as amended from time to time, changes to the CMC.
Correct.
So it does apply. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Question, Mr.
Yes, sir.
How do these fees compare to our neighboring communities?
These fees?
Yeah.
The 7% is the statutory maximum, but it's also seems to be the preferred amount as you look around the cities. I know the council has gone through a few of these workshops. We have a lot of cities that operate at well over half, it looks like, of the cities just operate at the 7% level. I provided this to you guys, I think, at workshops, and even made it part of a packet at one point so that the public could have seen it too. But, yeah, it's the rate that is allowed by law, and so a lot of cities go ahead and set that rate at that rate.
And the registration and application fee that is being suggested is pretty comparable to the...
Well, it's supposed to address, just the registration fee itself is supposed to address administrative costs of actually, taking it in, somebody's going to have to look over the accounting of this. And so it's actually probably low, frankly, in terms of when people look at the accounting every quarter to see, I mean, it's the application fee itself, but the reality is administering these things takes staff time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And could you remind us again tonight, Joe, about how these fees are not necessarily additive?
Correct.
How there's a cap.
Yeah, I mean, under the ordinance, if it passes its second reading tonight, the council, I understood my marching orders to be, and the language reflects the idea that there's a tax credit that's given for any franchise fees that are paid against the registration fee. Those two are, under case law, they're separate and they're intentionally separate. The franchise fee itself has to do with the right-of-way and the public right-of-way. And being in that right-of-way, it has to be maintained, it has to be patrolled, and it's the public's right-of-way. And so there you have that statutory allowed amount of fee that can be charged for that. The registration fee idea is the privilege of just doing business in town, which is a completely separate idea. The council, I understood, wanted and made the language reflect that this registration, if there's an amount to be negotiated or had, tonight it's the suggested amount is 7 or 5%. Any fees that you pay for a franchise can be credited against that registration fee, so that really if you're paying 7% of revenues for a franchise fee, and you credit that against 5% of revenues for the registration, there's, in most cases, you're not going to be paying anything extra. So what it is it's a more robust way. It's a couple of different approaches that you can take for businesses, because not all businesses are the same and not all businesses operate the same. And so it's a kind of a robust way to build for a future that we don't always know what it's going to look like, where if things get defined in different ways under case law or under statutory law, then it allows a city to say, okay, well, we can always have this definition of revenues existing simultaneously, so that we know that, you know, the way we're doing business can be, you know, basically the revenues can be relied on, regardless of the different types of businesses or the different definitions that come down the pike.
So is it safe to say that there is a cap effectively at 7% of gross revenues under any combination, plus the $100 fee?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Any other questions for staff at this point? No? Okay. Well, then we will open up the public hearing for testimony. And the first yellow card I think I have is for Mr. Hauer.
Actually go together, so Roger start and then need me on the side.
Perfect. Thank you, gentlemen.
Roger Wright, 273 North Grand Street, Canby. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. To begin with, I would like to make 2 points clear. First of all, we don't know if we're a proponent or an opponent. And we've been a member of the community for 100 years, and we want to be here for 100 years more. So please, I'm looking for an interpretation and understanding. We're not here to be argumentative. That's not our purpose. We're genuinely seeking information. Do we have an opinion? Yes, we'll have an opinion, but it's after we understand the interpretation. Second of all, it's not my style to bushwhack anybody. I don't intend to. I sent to council last week a letter of our specific questions. I did not get them answered, so I guess I have to come out here to answer them, but the questions should not surprise anybody. I don't work that way. Okay, let's begin, and I'm going to try to explain it by, Paul, would you hand those out to them, please? This is a chart I made which would help us interpret what we're doing and what our position might be. Now, I realize that the members of the audience can't see it, or the people on TV. Could I use that board? Is that possible to
Yes, sir.
write that out? fault, and I gave mine away, so.
Give one to Jim.
Thanks, Paul.
I really didn't hear this in Joe's explanation, so I'm not trying to go over anything. Okay, first of all, we've talked about two things today. The franchise fee, this is on your paper. And then we have over here, we have the registration fee. Now, at the bottom of your page, I've written the words which is in your resolution and in your ordinance. Gross revenues are defined as any and all revenues of any kind, nature, or form, and then it has those words, subject to all applicable limitations imposed by federal or state law. And 2 weeks, if you recall, I was trying to find out what those were. It's very important to us. It's a serious issue we need to understand. Now, there is a statute, ORS 221.515. Okay, this is the 221.515, of which we are acting under right now, today. Last year, it generated $56,400 worth of fees on those gross revenues. Now, it's defined by statute. It goes in there, and it says carrier, telecommunication carrier. And your ordinance said that. So we were under that. So you go to that, and Joe is right, it says 7% of gross revenues as defined by ORS 403.105. So those are state laws, 403.105. Then we go over here, and then we enact, I assume you enact the ordinance, and it has a different definition of gross revenues. So, the 403.105 says that gross revenues is what is on local exchange access. That's where this number came. So, do these statutes still apply? That's what I asked in the letter. Didn't get a response. I didn't hear it tonight. I know that what you did in the ordinance, you changed that, you scratched out the word provider, and you struck out the word carrier. And then you put a new definition, which means all, except you said 2 weeks ago it didn't include the internet. So I'm looking here, but it still says applicable state law. We meet that definition of applicable state law. I think we're still under this, and this is what I'm trying to find out tonight, and what I've tried to do in my letter. Now, if you're saying all, this number then becomes 75% more than this. And that's what we have to go to. Your citizens, our ratepayers, and says, we had a 75% increase in fees. So, which applies? Extremely important. We need to know. If it's this, we've got a smiley face. If we're over here, we're like this. That's where we are. So then they go over here to registration. And it's the same issue. It says 7% of the gross, 5%. Well, that's real important. If it's 5% of what we think is statutory, and that's what we believe, this number is 40,000 some odd thing. We're very happy, we're okay, we understand that. But if you go over here and say, well, the registration is really meant on everything, then we get over here to the number of 70,500, which is a 27% increase. Now, these are big figures to us. You know, we talk about gross revenues, and I think you need to know on the telephone company, the revenues that we have, it's different than our income taxes. This is gross revenues. If we have the gross revenues, It doesn't mean we make a profit. It certainly doesn't. Don't think that. We don't have a profit. We have to pay on that, and we've got to figure out how to do it. Again, we think because applicable state law, we meet the definition, we're a local exchange carrier. We don't think you can change the state definitions in the statute. If you tell us this is what it is, and you meant, that's the legislative intent, the first and third columns apply, we're okay. If you tell me it's the second and fourth, we got some issues. Very simple. Does anybody understand what I'm saying? Okay, now, right.
I want to see on the fourth column, Roger,
Yes.
the 70,500, what is that 27% increase of, the third column?
That would be what we estimate if it's all here, and you take the 5% of it, because it said 5% thing.
Yeah, there's a
Okay.
27% increase over column 3.
Over
And the
column 3. Well, actually,
5% of everything.
it's actually a 75%, column 4 is a 75% increase over column 3, if that's what.
No, this one is a 27% over what we're
Okay,
paying now.
okay, that's
You're
why-
adding a
Okay.
registration.
That's what I
Gotcha.
wanted.
Okay.
Gotcha,
Yeah,
okay.
excuse me.
Thank you.
Okay?
I just was trying to help you out there, so.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
It's more than
I mean, this is
27.
important. We really want to know what it is.
Yeah.
You understand that first and third, because we think we still have a statute, we checked into it, we think that's good. We don't think you can change the state law by your ordinance, and we meet that definition. Second of all, I want to point out something that I thought was interesting that came up. Your ordinance, excuse me, the resolution says 7% revenues, and then it says if no revenues, it's 2%, $2 per linear foot. I really think you ought to consider, there's no word or, and you should have the words whichever is greater. Now, I think it's very simple. If I was a telecommunications carrier and I was just going through town, I'd get a customer and I'd get $1, and I'd walk with you in my niche and say, here's my nickel, have a good day. So I really think the intent was to level the playing field, to try and do that. And if you put in the words, whichever is greater, I think you're covering a real loophole that you've unintentionally created. So, that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions you might. I hope you've considered this, important. I'm not trying to bushwhack anybody. Again, if I'd have got the answers last week, I wouldn't have had to come in here. I'd know exactly where we were and state the position. Okay, Paul, do you have anything you want to add?
I think you covered it. Thank you.
I have a question. So, going with what we just talked about, so the registration fee will go against the franchise fee, correct, Joe?
The franchise fee, whatever is paid in the franchise fee, can be credited against any registration fee. That's important. Saying whichever is greater might sound very fair, but the problem is, under law, there's different reasons for why you're charging the two different things. The law is clear that you can go ahead and credit it, even if it's separate universes, but what you can't do is say, pay one or the other, because the law says one of them is exclusively for the right to be in the ground, and the other one is exclusively for the right to do business in town. And when you start muddling them up and saying, well, whichever one is greater, then the argument can be made legally that, look, you really didn't mean them to be separate, you just want the most money. And that isn't the reason for the two different ways. The two different ways have to remain separate. And so, just legally speaking, you're not going to get away with saying whichever is greater and have it pass current case law.
Well, usually I'll question that, but I think you see the issue if you walk in with $1 and say, well, we caught it, we fit that category. I think the purpose is for the registration and how you fix the registration, whether it is for the revenues or for the underground crossing.
Registration is absolutely not for underground.
It's a cost of doing business, and it's pretty difficult for me to understand if a guy walks in there in the nickel and say, that fits it, they're okay, when you have all these other costs and plowing through the roads and everything else. I question that. I respectfully do.
As to the definitions, I would point out, because I have to, that currently Cambitel operates under a franchise set in 2011. And the franchise fee, section 4 of their franchise agreement between the city of Canby and Cambitel, A, reads as follows: as consideration for the use of the city's rights-of-way, grantee shall remit to the city 7% of its gross revenues earned from a provision of telecommunication services as defined in the statute within the city. Gross revenue shall mean any and all revenue of any kind, nature or form, without deduction for expense, less net uncollectible, subject to all applicable limitation imposed by federal or state law. So they've been operating for 3 years under this same exact definition without any confusion.
So that would put them in columns 1 and 3?
Well, they currently, subject to state law, operate under the limitations of 221515 as an incumbent.
So if this
Well, we
passes,
currently,
they
will we
still-
continue to, Joe? That's the question.
Same definition.
We cannot charge an incumbent beyond the limitations that are currently there for the exchange access services under the right-of-way. But you can charge a registration fee and set it what you want for all revenues
Okay,
in town.
So you're saying that column 1 would apply, and then you're saying whether it's 3 or 4 is up to the council, how they're doing it?
That's right.
Okay, and again, I guess the definition on column 3 or 4 is what would the statute 215, I forgot the stat, 515
Yeah.
or whatever, does that, 221-515, does that apply?
It doesn't apply because 221-515 applies to franchises, which apply only to when you're in the ground. It has nothing to do with the privilege of doing business in town.
Having a hard time understanding that, Joe.
Oh.
Because it's a registration that you're charging for going underneath the ground. It seems like we're trying to make a distinction without a practical effect here to me. So, I don't understand your statement.
If I could ask a question, so it would be your estimate that if their revenues were to stay the same, their taxes and fees should be the same, is that correct?
The way in which their particular business is set up, and I'm not sure where these numbers came from, but their estimate is that the 5% of registration fee looks as if on their paper like there will be an increase because they will get a credit of $56,400 against what looks like a $70,000 bill.
So the franchise fee credit goes against the registration.
Right.
Yeah,
So their bill each year would be the 70,000, is what you're saying?
if that's what he's saying. I don't know
Well,
his accounting,
given-
but yeah.
right. When he's currently doing 56.
And that 70,000 was based on the expanded purview of the revenues that are being captured in the new section of the registration fee.
So you want to pay $14,000 on there.
So we're in agreement then that column 1 still applies?
Column 1 applies to this franchise, it has to,
Okay.
under law.
So, assuming revenues stay the same, that's a $56,400 bill.
Yes, if you agree to his number, and I don't.
Using the numbers here on the
Yes,
sheet,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Right, because we don't have their financial statement. And you're saying that in the case of the registration fee, it is not subject to 221-515, right?
No, because it has to be under case law and the way it's written in our code. It is a separate idea entirely. It's a different way of approaching a business. It's for the privilege of doing business in town. It's not, has nothing to do with the right of way.
So assuming the numbers are right, then you are comfortable that they could be looking at a $70,500 bill.
If what they're saying is true, if a 5%, then yeah, they'll end up paying, whatever factoring of the franchise fee against it.
Right. So there is a
But it
net.
won't be a double, it'll just end up being
Right.
5% of their gross revenues.
So it's roughly a hit of $14,000 if the numbers are all what they seem to be.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
That's our understanding, yes.
Right. And so to have a revenue-neutral situation, our registration fee would need to be 4% instead of 5%.
Oh, yeah, that could be, I haven't done those numbers.
Right.
And I wasn't aware of these until now. Okay.
And I believe you briefed us a couple weeks ago or so that is one of the levers that we can adjust.
Oh, yeah, you could choose to do, whatever number you wanted for the registration fee, whatever you think, the privilege of doing business in town is.
Yeah. Anybody else for Joe or Roger or Paul? No? Great. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Mr. Galloway.
Thank you, Mayor. And I have Karen Danner here with me from Wave Broadband. My name is Alan Galloway. I'm an attorney at Davis Wright Tremaine in Portland at 1300 Southwest 5th Avenue in downtown Portland. I'm going to, I think, let Karen introduce herself and talk a little bit about the changes that were outlined in the comments, and then maybe I'll follow up and be available to answer some of your questions.
So, yes, Mayor and Council, Karen Danaher, Wave Broadband. Our office is in Woodburn. We also have one in Canby, but I'm housed in the Woodburn office at 669 Glatt Circle. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening, and I think for the most part, we would say that we're a proponent of the ordinance with some clarification. So our understanding on the registration fee, I think that we understand the fact that this is for the right and privilege of business in your community, and that is a separate item over the franchise. To me, I think, and to our company, we think that we need to understand in that, I think that your intent was that the internet services would be carved out, but the language doesn't seem to be as clear as we feel we'd like to see it be, that it would not be part of this additional revenue. Is our understanding of that is also that it wouldn't be allowed under Oregon law. So, and then I guess additionally, the only other question is that there seems that the difference between what the incumbent is paying at 5% versus our 7% for Wave.
What I think Karen is getting at is, in a way, the point alluded to just now, which is that for years and years, competitive providers, and I should clarify, I'm here tonight on behalf of both Wave and TW Telecom, although that's mostly for the franchise that's coming up. But competitive providers have been taxed at a higher rate than incumbents like Canby Tel. And so the standard, at least in my experience in Oregon, is that typically cities will tax or charge 5% of all gross revenues for the use of the rights of way to competitors, but they'll only be able to charge 7% only of the local exchange access to the incumbents. And that always, frankly, adds up to less than 5% even of all the gross revenues. And so what we see this ordinance doing primarily, and one of the reasons that, I want to commend you, Mr. Mayor, and your city attorney for, getting up to speed fairly quickly on an arcane area of law, telecommunications law. This does level the playing field in a sense, because the registration fee for the privilege of providing telecommunications in the city, and not for the use of the rights of way, is not subject to that ORS 221-515 limitation, and therefore you actually can apply really an even rate, whether you choose to make it 5 or something else. You can apply that equally to all carriers, and that has not been the case under just a franchise system. And so that frankly puts competitive companies at a disadvantage, because they're paying a lot more for the use of the rights of way than the incumbent. And this approach evens things out by introducing this fee that has a different purpose, as Mr. Lindsay had explained earlier. I think our concerns are largely that the intent which we applaud behind the ordinance isn't fully realized in the language, and so we've proposed some comments, and including a red line. I hope you've had a chance to see those. We sent those to Mr. Lindsay and Mr. Ellis last week, late last week, and I apologize that we weren't able to get those to you sooner. If you've had a chance to review those, I'd be happy to answer questions. I can sort of just run through what the changes were. Should I run through them?
Yes.
Okay. The changes that were proposed, the first change was that we think it would make sense to move the definition of gross revenues from the fee resolution into the ordinance itself. And part of the reason is that the phrase gross revenues is used a couple of times in the ordinance itself, but it's not defined there. So our proposal essentially was to move the definition into the ordinance and then have the fee resolution reference it. And we did have some changes that we would propose to the fee resolution, and one addresses, I think, one of the remaining problems we see with the ordinance, which is double taxation. And the idea here in a nutshell is, if, let's say, Canbytel sells telecommunications service to Wave, and Wave resells it, under the ordinance as written, they're going to pay the fee each time. So if Canbytel sells it for $100 and Wave sells it for $110 at retail, you get, let's say, just with the registration fee for doing business, you do 5% the first time, so that's $5, and then you do 5% of the 110, so it's another $5. And see, this is why lawyers aren't good at math, but
We can try.
yeah, it's like you end up getting basically over $10, right, for $110. So you get basically over 10%. So what we propose is that you simply be able to back out any wholesale fees that you paid, fees that you paid to another carrier from that gross revenue. And that way, if, let's say, Canbytel sells it to Wave for $100, and Wave turns a profit, they sell it for $110, you get 5% of the $100, and then you get 5% of the $10 profit. So you still get your full 5%, but you don't get, 11 or 10.5%. So that's, we see that as just a competitive equity issue as far as fairness and not discriminating against people who might have to buy some of their telecommunications service from a wholesaler. The second change, the second, I would say one more thing about that. Federal law basically requires that these types of fees be non-discriminatory, particularly fees for use of the rights of way. So we think that goes more towards that goal and is more consistent with federal law to have no penalty essentially for being a reseller. The second item that we have here is the internet exception. It's always been my understanding that the city does not intend to tax internet access or Wi-Fi or anything like that. I attended some of the work sessions earlier. I was unable to attend the initial reading of this, but consistently my impression has been internet access is off the table. We would simply like to see that be expressed in the ordinance, that these fees do not apply to internet access revenues. And that could also be done in several ways. We've proposed defining internet access, and I guess I'll refer to our written comments for the mechanism we use to do that. But any express way of carving it out would be within the spirit of what we're asking for. The third thing is that, if you have a franchise, we think that those franchises should control. Of course, it's always up to the city whether to grant a franchise or to just have a company come in and deal with the telecommunications ordinance. But we think that if you have negotiated a franchise with a carrier, then those terms should control the compensation rather than the ordinance. And then the last change we propose is just a slight tweak to the definition of cable service. Right now it references federal law. We just want to have the exact statute that I'm 99% sure is the one that you intended to reference be listed in the ordinance.